In the distant future, humanity's once glorious rise to power had culminated in the creation of the Genesis fleet, a colossal armada of ships, each capable of exploring the farthest corners of the galaxy. These ships, more advanced than anything seen in the known universe, were designed to carry humanity to the stars, creating a golden age for Earth. But a strange event occurred centuries ago. The Galactic Coalition, a council of powerful alien races, deemed humanity's influence too dangerous. A sudden ban was enforced, stopping humans from traveling beyond their home system. With that, the Genesis fleet was locked away, its existence buried deep in the planet's history, erased from the minds of the galaxy's inhabitants. No one remembered the true power of these ships, nor why they had once been created. The peaceful quiet of the Sol system was suddenly shattered, and a strange anomaly appeared at its edge. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, but as time passed, it grew stronger. The galaxy, with its countless civilizations and conflicts, took notice. The Genesis fleet had returned. Not only had it resurfaced, but it glowed with an energy that was unfamiliar and far beyond anything modern technology had ever seen. The ships seemed almost alive, their sleek surfaces shimmering with a power that both intrigued and terrified the galaxy. How had they come back? And why now? As the anomaly spread, panic and curiosity swept through the Galactic Coalition. Whispers of the fleet's return sparked fear in some and excitement in others. But one thing was clear: humanity's past was back to haunt the galaxy. The memories of the fleet's disappearance slowly resurfaced among the few ancient records that still remained. The humans had once wielded power beyond comprehension, and now it seemed their legacy had returned. At the heart of this mystery stood Commander Selene Carter, a young, skilled officer who was more than just a capable leader of the Coalition's forces. Selene was a direct descendant of the original architect of the Genesis fleet, her bloodline tied to the creation of this fleet of unimaginable power. However, Selene had lived her life unaware of the deep-rooted history that ran through her veins. She had trained to be a commander, a protector of peace in the galaxy, not a keeper of forgotten secrets. But everything changed when she was unexpectedly called to investigate the anomaly. At first, it was a simple mission. She was to lead a small team to gather data and report findings. Yet, as soon as she set foot on the bridge of her assigned ship, the Astrea, things grew stranger by the minute. Sensors picked up strange energy readings. The anomaly grew larger, and the Genesis fleet was now unmistakably visible. It was no longer just an echo in the galaxy's distant corners. It was a reality. The fleet was here, and its intentions were unclear. As Selene's team ventured closer, the fleet's presence became more intense, its energy pulsing with unknown force. The ships seemed to beckon them, but why? No one knew. The silence of space was heavy with tension, and Selene's every decision weighed on her. Should they approach cautiously or prepare for conflict? The deeper they moved into the unknown, the more questions arose. Was this a sign of goodwill, or had humanity's past come back to challenge the galaxy? The pressure mounted as the galactic powers scrambled for answers. Was this fleet humanity's triumphant return to the stars, or a harbinger of something darker? Commander Selene Carter's name, once a simple military title, was now tied to a mystery that could rewrite history. What had caused the Genesis fleet to disappear all those years ago, and why was it back? Each passing moment only deepened the enigma, as Selene struggled to reconcile her duty as a leader with the terrifying implications of her heritage. The answers, she realized, might be buried in the very ships she was now so closely linked to. But the stakes were high. Discovering the truth could alter the course of the galaxy forever. Would humanity's return signal a new era of peace and exploration, or would it lead to chaos and destruction? Time was running out, and the fate of the galaxy rested on Commander Selene Carter's shoulders. The return of the Genesis fleet had turned the galaxy upside down. The once-forgotten ships, now glowing with mysterious energy, hovered like silent titans in the void. Commander Selene Carter knew the questions about the fleet's return would need answers, But the weight of what she was uncovering was far heavier than she could have imagined. The mission was simple: investigate the cause of the fleet's reappearance and uncover the secrets hidden within. But as she and her diverse crew, composed of humans and former alien allies, boarded the fleet's first ship, the Titan, the truth began to slowly unravel in ways they could never have predicted. The moment they entered the colossal ship, a sense of awe washed over the crew. The Titan was not just a vessel, it was a monument, a testament to humanity's once great potential. Every corner of the ship seemed to pulse with energy, its very walls whispering forgotten stories of a time long past. As Selene and her crew began to explore the dark, forgotten halls, they found signs of ancient civilization scattered across the ship's labyrinthine corridors. The ship's systems were largely offline, yet strange symbols flashed across the consoles, and hidden compartments revealed cryptic messages left behind by the fleet's creators. Each message hinted at a deep, unsettling truth: the humans had been too powerful, their technology too advanced for the galaxy to control. One of Selene's crew members, Tarek, an expert in alien languages, worked tirelessly to translate the messages, piecing together fragments of a long-forgotten history. As the crew ventured deeper into the ship, they uncovered more messages, all leading to the same conclusion. Humanity's banishment from the stars wasn't due to a desire for conquest, but fear. The Galactic Coalition had not feared humanity's military might, but rather its potential. The humans had developed technologies capable of reshaping entire worlds, even galaxies, and the Coalition had realized that if those powers were ever misused, they could destroy entire civilizations. They were not banished because they were conquerors, but because they had become so powerful, even their own existence posed a risk to the galaxy. The discovery sent a ripple of shock through the crew. For centuries, humanity had been told that they were exiled for their aggression, for their potential to disrupt peace. But now, with the fleet's return, it seemed the true reason had been far darker. Humanity's potential was a threat too great to be allowed free rein. The crew could not shake the feeling that something far more sinister was at play. Were they now the galaxy's saviors, or had the humans unknowingly returned as something even more dangerous? As they dug deeper into the bowels of the Titan, Selene made a discovery that would change everything. Hidden within the ship's core was an ancient data core, locked away for centuries, its presence nearly forgotten. The moment she accessed the core, it came alive with a surge of data, a flood of information from humanity's past that sent a chill through her spine. The messages contained warnings from the past, left behind by the very humans who had once walked these ships. It became clear that the banishment had not been a simple act of political maneuvering, but a deliberate decision made in fear of what humanity could become. The data core revealed a terrifying truth: humanity had once unleashed powers that could warp the very fabric of reality. Their technology had evolved to such a point that it had become a force capable of altering time, space, and the laws of nature itself. If this power was ever misused, it could bring entire star systems to their knees. This was why the fleet had been locked away, why humanity had been erased from galactic history. The Galactic Coalition, in its wisdom, had realized that to allow humanity to roam free in the galaxy was to invite catastrophe. The humans had been too dangerous, even to themselves. As Selene read the final message from the data core, a cold realization set in. The Genesis fleet had been both a symbol of humanity's greatest triumph and their greatest danger. The fleet's return was not a sign of a new era of peace and prosperity, but the beginning of a conflict that could reshape the galaxy forever. The unknown force that had triggered the fleet's reawakening was no accident. Someone or something had ensured that humanity's legacy would resurface at a time when it could tip the balance of power across the stars. As the crew left the darkened halls of the Titan, the weight of what they had learned pressed down on them. They had not merely uncovered the past, they had discovered a warning, a message left for a future that could no longer be ignored. Humanity was no longer just a forgotten relic, they were a force waiting to be reckoned with. And now the galaxy would have to decide, Would they trust humanity's potential, or would they fear it forever? The news of the Genesis fleet's returns spread like wildfire across the galaxy, reaching every corner of the known universe in a matter of days. Civilizations, once complacent in their dominance, now found themselves on edge. The fleet's mysterious reappearance had set off a chain reaction, and many factions began to stir from their centuries-old slumber, aware that their future could be threatened by the potential power humanity now possessed. One such faction was the Sark Dominion, a brutal, militaristic species whose empire spanned countless star systems. The Sarks had once faced humanity in battle centuries ago, during the earliest days of interstellar exploration. Humanity, then a young and untested species, had managed to drive them back, halting their expansion into the farthest reaches of the galaxy. It was a bitter defeat for the Sark Dominion, and they had never forgotten it. Now, with humanity's return, the Dominion feared that their old rival might once again pose a threat to their carefully planned conquests. They knew that the Genesis fleet, with its unparalleled power and technology, could disrupt their ambitions and throw the galaxy into chaos. Quietly, they began to stir from the shadows, plotting their counterattack, preparing to face the threat they had long avoided. But the Sark Dominion was not the only force to take notice. As Selene's fleet continued its journey through the depths of space, something else was watching from afar. A mysterious alien race, calling themselves the Elder Patrons, made their first contact with humanity. The Elders were a race unlike any the humans had encountered before, ancient, enigmatic, and deeply knowledgeable about the galaxy's hidden truths. They had watched the rise of civilizations for millennia, their presence felt in the stories passed down by the oldest of the galactic races. They claimed to have been responsible for helping humanity evolve its technology, pushing the boundaries of science and discovery during ancient times before the Genesis fleet was sealed away. But their message was not one of celebration or alliance. Instead, they spoke with a foreboding tone, warning Selene and her crew that humanity's return could set off a chain of events that no one, not even the Elder Patrons, could foresee. The Elders cautioned that the very power of the Genesis fleet held the potential to trigger a cosmic catastrophe, one that could unravel the fabric of space and time itself. The fleet's technology, once seen as a symbol of human progress, might now be the very thing that could destroy the galaxy. The warnings from the Elder Patrons sent a ripple of unease through Selene and her crew. What had once been a symbol of humanity's greatness was now a source of dread, and the stakes of their mission were higher than ever. The fleet, it seemed, was not simply a tool to be wielded. It was a force of unimaginable power that had the potential to reshape the entire universe, for better or for worse. The Elder Patrons spoke of a delicate balance, one that had been maintained for eons, and they suggested that humanity's return might be the final disruption needed to tip that balance into chaos. Selene's mind raced as she processed the warning. The Genesis fleet was not just a relic of the past, it was a key, one that could either unlock salvation or bring about destruction. The Elder Patrons claimed that they could help guide humanity, but the help came with strings attached. Would humanity's rise lead to an era of peace, or was it a harbinger of something much darker? The mysterious alien race left Selene with a difficult choice. Would she trust the Elders and follow their cryptic guidance, or would she push forward, determined to unlock the full potential of the fleet regardless of the risk? As if things weren't complicated enough, the Sark Dominion began to make their move, sending fleets into the nearby systems in a show of strength, their ships gliding ominously through the void. Selene knew that the coming conflict was unavoidable. The Dominion, with their centuries-old hatred for humanity, would not stand idly by while the Genesis fleet threatened their plans. In this uncertain time, Selene and her crew had to prepare for a war that was not only against the Dominion, but against forces far more powerful and mysterious than they had ever imagined. The choice was no longer just about humanity's place in the galaxy. It was about whether humanity could survive the consequences of its own potential. The galaxy was on the brink of something monumental. The Elder Patrons offered their help, but with a heavy price. The Tsark Dominion was preparing to strike, and all the while, Selene Carter was caught in the middle of a game of cosmic proportions, where the choices she made could either save or doom the galaxy. The future had never seemed so uncertain, and the weight of it all pressed heavily on her shoulders. Selene Carter found herself trapped in a web of shifting alliances, each more fragile than the last. The return of humanity's Genesis fleet had thrown the galaxy into chaos, and now every faction seemed to have an agenda. On one hand, there were those like the United Worlds Federation, a coalition of peaceful species who saw humanity's return as a chance to restore balance and perhaps even unite the galaxy under a banner of cooperation. They were willing to overlook humanity's dark past, believing that the power of the Genesis fleet could tip the scales in favor of peace. But others, like the Vark Empire, saw the fleet as a grave threat, an uncontrollable force capable of destabilizing their long-held power. The Vark were a calculating race, their eyes ever focused on their own dominance. They believed that humanity's return would only serve to disrupt the fragile order they had built, and they would stop at nothing to prevent it. Amidst this backdrop of growing tension, a summit was called on a neutral station located at the far edge of the galaxy. It was to be a meeting of the galaxy's most powerful leaders, where decisions about humanity's future would be made. Selene had been chosen to speak on behalf of her people, to assure the Council that humanity was not a threat, but an opportunity for peace. She knew that the eyes of the galaxy would be upon her, and she was prepared to deliver a speech that would convince the skeptical and the fearful. But as she arrived at the summit, she could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her. There were those in the room who had already made up their minds, and they would not be swayed by her words. As Selene stood before the council, speaking with all the conviction she could muster, the room seemed to close in around her. Her words echoed in the vast chamber, painting a vision of a future where humanity and the galaxy could work together. Just as she finished, a sharp sound cut through the air, followed by a blur of motion. A gunshot rang out. In an instant, the galaxy's fate hung in the balance. The crowd gasped in horror as Selene staggered, her chest pierced by the deadly shot. But just as quickly, Captain Halen, one of Selene's trusted officers, leaped into action, throwing himself in front of her to shield her from the blow. The shot had missed its target, and the attempt on Selene's life had failed. The council erupted into chaos. Captain Halen, once a loyal officer, was not the hero the galaxy thought he was. As he stood over Selene's shaken form, his true allegiance was revealed in a chilling moment of betrayal. Halen had been secretly working for the Tsark Dominion, feeding them information on humanity's movements and plans. His role in the assassination attempt had been to eliminate Selene and destabilize humanity's position in the galaxy. But now, with the truth out, the already fragile alliances broke down completely. The news of Halen's betrayal spread like wildfire, and the summit descended into complete disorder. The trust that had been slowly built between factions shattered in a heartbeat. Mutiny spread throughout Selene's fleet as Halen's sympathizers rallied behind the Tsark Dominion's cause, eager to see humanity fall. Within moments, a full-scale rebellion broke out among the ranks of her crew. Once loyal officers and crew members turned against her, siding with the Dominion's interests. Selene's position was no longer secure. Faced with an insurrection on her own ship, and with time running out, Selene made a split-second decision. She ordered an emergency escape, gathering a small group of loyalists, including some of her closest allies, and fleeing the station before the mutineers could trap her. As she boarded an escape pod, the chaos of the summit faded into the distance, but the weight of the betrayal hung heavily in her mind. The Tsark Dominion had managed to turn one of her own against her, and now she was alone, leading a handful of survivors. Selene's escape was only the beginning of a new chapter in the galaxy's struggle. The mutiny had put her at odds with factions she had once called allies, and now the Genesis fleet, a symbol of humanity's strength, was split and vulnerable. She had to act fast, but the path ahead was unclear. The galaxy was teetering on the edge of war, and Selene's next moves would determine not only her own survival, but the fate of humanity itself. Would she be able to reclaim her fleet and navigate the treacherous alliances that have formed against her? Or would the Tsarp Dominion finally succeed in their plot to crush humanity's rise? The answers were as uncertain as the future itself. Selene Carter and her small group of loyalists drifted through the stars, hunted by factions that once considered humanity a potential ally. The mutiny had scattered the Genesis fleet, and the fragile trust between Selene and the galaxy's leaders had been shattered. With each passing day, the tension grew heavier, and the uncertainty of her next move weighed on her. But amidst the chaos and the danger, a discovery that would alter everything was waiting for her. Deep within the Titan's archives, a vast library of forgotten knowledge, Selene uncovered a hidden history, a history that had been sealed away for centuries, one that explained not just humanity's rise to power, but their pivotal role in the very fabric of the universe. As she pored over ancient records, Selene's mind reeled with the implications of what she was learning. The files she unearthed told a story far more incredible than she could have imagined. Humanity had not just been explorers of the stars, but the architects of the very structure of the galaxy. Long before the Genesis fleet had been locked away, humanity had discovered something truly extraordinary, an ancient intergalactic network known as the Stellar Nexus. It was a creation of unimaginable scale, designed to link the entire universe through a web of energy, information, and power. The Nexus had been the cornerstone of humanity's technological leap, allowing them to travel between galaxies in the blink of an eye, manipulate vast amounts of energy, and even alter the fundamental laws of physics. But this power, as great as it was, came with a terrible price. The Stellar Nexus was not a force to be wielded lightly. In fact, humanity had abandoned it after learning of its potential to collapse entire galaxies, to unravel the very fabric of space and time itself. The Nexus, if activated, could trigger an event so catastrophic that it would erase not just civilizations, but entire star systems, maybe even the fabric of the universe. It was too dangerous, and humanity, in their wisdom, had chosen to lock it away. But in doing so, they had become its guardians, keeping the knowledge of the Nexus hidden, ensuring that no one, not even the galaxy's greatest powers, could access it again. Selene's hands trembled as she sifted through the final records, piecing together the tragic truth. Humanity had not just left a legacy of exploration and innovation. They had been the protectors of something far more dangerous, a cosmic weapon that could alter the universe on a whim. The Genesis fleet had not just been a symbol of humanity's power, it had been the key to guarding the Stellar Nexus, keeping its deadly potential from falling into the wrong hands. And now the Nexus was at risk of being discovered once more. As the mutiny continued to unravel her crew, and the factions in the galaxy closed in, Selene realized something far more urgent than just surviving was at stake. The true danger was not the Genesis fleet itself, nor even the power struggles between the factions. The Stellar Nexus was the heart of it all, and if it was activated, it would reshape the entire universe. Selene had been entrusted with the knowledge of this network, and now the same people who had once feared humanity's return were trying to unlock its power for themselves. The thought of the Tsarp Dominion, or any other faction, getting their hands on the Nexus filled Selene with dread. The Elder Patron's warnings had hinted at something far darker, but now it was clear. Humanity had not just been exiled for their potential to conquer, but for the very technology they had created and abandoned. The Nexus was humanity's greatest creation, but it was also their greatest curse. The idea that such power could fall into the wrong hands was terrifying, and as Selene stared at the records, she knew what she had to do. But she also knew that the road ahead was fraught with peril. The galaxy was closing in on her, and the truth about the Stellar Nexus was now in danger of becoming the next battleground. Selene had to find a way to protect the Nexus, to keep it hidden, and to prevent its activation at all costs. Yet, with every faction seeking control of the Genesis fleet, time was running out. Would humanity's legacy be their salvation or their destruction? Would Selene be able to stop those who sought to exploit the stellar nexus, or would it be the force that brought an end to everything? The answer seemed more elusive with each passing moment, but one thing was certain: Selene Carter's fate was now bound to the secret of the nexus. The galaxy was about to change forever, and humanity's legacy would either save it or doom it. The war for the Genesis fleet and the stellar nexus had begun, as the Tsarp Dominion and their growing alliance of factions launched a full-scale assault on Selene's fleet. The galaxy trembled under the weight of the conflict. The Tsarks, relentless and calculating, were determined to control both the fleet and the ancient power hidden within the stellar nexus, believing that with such power they could dominate the galaxy and crush any opposition. For them, humanity's return was not an opportunity for peace, but a threat to their centuries-old ambitions. As their forces closed in, Selene and her loyalists prepared for a fight that would determine the future of the galaxy, and possibly the universe itself. But the stakes were higher than Selene could have ever imagined. The elder patrons, who had warned of the destructive potential of the Nexus, reached out to her once more. Their voices, filled with urgency and dread, echoed in her mind as they sent a final, desperate warning. The Nexus, they said, was not just a key to galactic power. It was a cosmic force, capable of unraveling the very fabric of existence. If activated, it could cause a chain reaction that would destroy not only the galaxy but the entire multiverse itself, shattering countless realities into oblivion. Selene understood now that the real enemy was not the Dominion alone, but the stellar nexus itself, a force of unimaginable power that could bring about the end of everything. The truth was clear: if humanity's legacy was to survive, the nexus had to be kept locked away forever. With the Dominion's forces closing in and the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, Selene knew that there was no time to waste. In a bold and desperate move, she turned to the ancient power of the Genesis fleet itself. The fleet's ships, once dormant, were now fully awakened, and their weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Using the fleet's advanced technology, Selene managed to hold off the Dominion forces, giving her just enough time to board a specialized ship and race toward the stellar nexus's core, the heart of the power that had shaped humanity's history. As Selene's ship entered the nexus's core, she was greeted with an eerie silence, a vast and empty space that seemed to pulse with the power of the universe itself. The stellar nexus was not a place, but an energy field that stretched across the stars, a web of interconnected power that resonated with every part of the cosmos. The closer Selene got to the core, the more she felt its overwhelming force, its potential to reshape the very nature of reality. It was a feeling unlike anything she had ever experienced, as if she was standing at the edge of existence itself, staring into the abyss of possibility. Inside the core, Selene was faced with a terrifying choice. The stellar nexus was now fully activated, and its power was ready to be unleashed. She could either shut it down forever, ensuring that no one would ever have access to its devastating potential, or she could harness its power, using it to reshape the future of the galaxy as she saw fit. The temptation was immense. With the nexus under her control, Selene could bring about an era of peace, rebuild the galaxy from the ashes of war, and finally unite the factions that had been torn apart. She could end the Tsarp Dominion's tyranny and usher in a new age of human prosperity. But there was a catch. The power to reshape the universe came with a terrible price. No one, not even the elder patrons, could predict the consequences of unleashing the full force of the Nexus. As she stood before the core, Selene felt the weight of history pressing down on her. She was no longer just the leader of the Genesis fleet. She was the guardian of humanity's legacy, standing at the crossroads of creation and destruction. The decision before her was not just about her own survival or the fate of her fleet. It was about whether humanity would become the architects of the future or the destroyers of the very universe they had once built. The Tsarp Dominion was closing in, and time was running out. Selene's heart raced as she considered the consequences of each choice. Would she shut down the Nexus, ensuring that no one, not even humanity, would ever have the power to alter reality itself? Or would she risk it all, wielding the Nexus's unimaginable power in an attempt to reshape the galaxy, knowing that she might unleash something far worse than the chaos she was trying to prevent? The battle for the stellar Nexus was not just a fight for control of the galaxy, it was a test of humanity's true nature. Would they rise above their past, or would they fall victim to the very power they had once wielded? Selene had no answers, only the terrifying knowledge that the future of the galaxy and the multiverse was in her hands. The galaxy was on the edge of oblivion, the battle between the Genesis fleet and the Tsark Dominion raging fiercely as Selene Carter faced the most crucial decision of her life. In the heart of the stellar Nexus, Selene stood at a precipice, with unimaginable power at her fingertips. The choice before her was simple, yet its consequences would ripple through the fabric of the universe itself. Should she shut down the Nexus, locking away its vast potential forever, or should she wield its power to reshape the galaxy, knowing full well the chaos it could unleash if misused? The weight of humanity's past, its legacy of both destruction and creation, pressed down on her shoulders. But it was not just humanity's future that hung in the balance. It was the fate of every sentient being in the galaxy, every star system, every planet that could either be healed or consumed by the Nexus's power. As the Dominion forces closed in on her position, Selene took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of strength and wisdom she had gained throughout the long, difficult journey. The decision was hers, but it was also humanity's. She could not allow her people to become conquerors, feared and hated by the very universe they sought to protect. The power of the Nexus could be their downfall if used recklessly, but it also held the key to healing the fractured galaxy, to uniting the warring factions and restoring balance. Humanity had been given a gift, but also a curse. It was not their place to rule over others. It was their destiny to become the guardians of this power, ensuring it would never be misused again. With a single motion, Selene made the choice that would forever alter the course of history. She activated the stellar Nexus in a controlled, delicate manner, allowing its vast energy to flow through the galaxy, not as a destructive force but as a healing one. The immense power surged through the cosmic web, mending the rifts between fractured star systems, restoring the wounded infrastructure of countless worlds, and severing the influence of those who sought to wield the Nexus for their own gain. The Tsark Dominion, realizing their hold on the galaxy was slipping, began to retreat, their ambitions thwarted by the very force they had sought to control. The Nexus, once feared as a weapon of annihilation, was now a force of rebirth, restoring balance to a galaxy torn apart by endless wars and rivalries. As the dust of battle settled and peace slowly began to take root, Selene's decision was hailed as the turning point in galactic history. The once forbidden Genesis fleet, symbols of humanity's past mistakes and unchecked power, became emblems of hope, cooperation, and the promise of a brighter future. The ships that had been locked away for centuries were now free, no longer seen as harbingers of war, but as instruments of unity. Humanity, once exiled from the stars, had proven that they were not conquerors, but protectors, able to wield the power of the stellar Nexus with wisdom and care. In the wake of this new peace, Selene established a galactic council, a collective of species and factions from across the galaxy, where humanity would share their knowledge of the Nexus. No longer would they hide in the shadows, feared and misunderstood. Instead, humanity would take its place as a leader in rebuilding the fractured galaxy, using the Nexus's power to protect and preserve the universe for future generations. The Council's purpose was simple: to ensure that no one faction would ever again have the power to dominate the galaxy, and that the lessons of the past would never be forgotten. Over time, the legacy of the Genesis fleet transformed. The once feared ships, now restored to their full power, became symbols of unity, exploration, and collaboration. Humanity's potential, once feared by the galaxy, was now embraced. No longer would their ingenuity and strength be a source of terror, but of hope. The return of the Genesis fleet marked the dawn of a new era, one where humanity's role in the galaxy was no longer a tale of isolation, exile, and fear, but a story of redemption, cooperation, and the shared future of all sentient beings. And as Selene stood at the helm of this new era, she knew that the galaxy had changed forever, not because of the power humanity wielded, but because they had chosen to become the guardians of that power, ensuring that it would never be used to destroy, but only to heal.